financial education, the financial education specialist here at EdFed, and I would like to welcome you all to another EdFed Academy webinar covering Auto Buying 101. EdFed Academy is our financial education platform where we provide webinars and workshops on a bunch of different topics with the hopes to provide you that financial education and product solutions for all of our members. But before we begin, please note that all participants have been muted and that we'll have some time for questions and answers towards the end of our presentation. So, auto buying is a hot topic. The best time to buy a car is said to be from now towards the end of the year. So, many of us are looking maybe to get into a new vehicle, and it may be challenging in this economy with the rising interest rates and lack of inventory. So, we really hope to provide you some helpful information that's going to help you throughout your auto buying journey. So, my name is Emery Sabater, and I am one of the financial education specialists, and I will be joined by our Director of Consumer Lending, the amazing Tim Scharnagl.
Thank you, Emery.
So, in today's 1 hour webinar on Auto Buying 101, Mr. Scharnagl here will be sharing some really amazing information for you guys to keep in mind for when you're getting ready to purchase your next vehicle. We're going to cover just some tips that's basically going to help you get the stress out of the whole car buying process. Anybody that's bought a car will know that pain. We're going to help you take a look at your finances and get a check to see where you're at before we even start shopping for a car. We're going to cover the 5 keys for savings to understand before we hit up the dealer. And lastly, we're going to learn about our EdFed Auto Advantage team. And remember, our Auto Advantage team has a consultative approach that is very different for our members. Our team is looking out for you and making sure that you get into a car that you want at the price that you want. And like I said before, we all know that auto buying is stressful. And if you've bought a car through a dealer or just bought a car in general, we know how that process can be. Right? It's an emotional decision for a lot of people because there's so many factors that are going into buying a car. It's a big purchase, it's an investment, and it's a really big commitment. So those 3 things jumbled up can really make us feel very excited, but nervous at the same time. So this webinar is created with you in mind, right? Tim is going to be sharing all of his best tips to help you feel like an expert. You're going to be leaving here feeling a lot more comfortable with your path to buying a car than when you first started. At least that's the hope. But first things first, we need to take a look at our current finances and we need to make sure that we are ready before we start even getting into the process of buying a car. So the first way to do that is taking a look at our finances and start asking ourselves, do we have room in our budget for this purchase in the first place? Do we have some sort of established savings that's going to cover us for whenever some sort of emergency may arise, like some sort of tires that were popped or something that we need to replace or whatever sort of car maintenance? Are we thinking about the cost of those things other than just the car payment itself? Are we thinking about the insurance payments as well as gas? We have to consider having maybe a savings account, at least for a few months, for some of these things. So that way, when an emergency happens, we're covered. We all know that life happens, and it's really good to have that savings there for when we need it. So I would really consider also to avoid the temptation of tapping into sources like your 401k or even diving into high interest credit cards because we really want to avoid any fees and we want to leave those investment funds there for when we retire, right? It's better to save it for the later time and try and save small steps now instead of having to pull out money for later. So next, or step 2, is going to be taking a look at our credit. Lenders are going to make sure that you either approved or denied based on your credit report and your credit score, right? And that's also going to affect your interest rate. So make sure you take an advantage of pulling a free credit report per year. You can do it at every single one of the three major credit reporting bureaus. You can pull one in January at Experian. You can pull one in summertime for Equifax, and you can also pull the last one in December for TransUnion. So you have basically three different free reports of your credit that you can check throughout the year to make sure that one, all of your things that are listed on there are yours, and making sure that everything is accurate. So once we have step one, getting our savings in order, and step two, taking a look at our credit, then we're ready for our next step. I now have Tim Scharnagl here joining me to cover some updates in the market and how to unlock those savings.
Thank you, Emery. And I think we're going to switch over. I'm going to share my screen here. Right, there we go. So we're going to discuss today the 5 keys to real savings. So as Emery introduced me, I'm Tim Scharnagl. I'm the Director of Lending here at EdFed. I've been with EdFed for about 15 years and hoping to be able to share some of my experience and what we see in the industry for the auto buying process, and hopefully give you some good tips and tools to make that process less stressful, I should say, for you. So let's start out with the auto buying environment. So where are we at today? So we know with the pandemic, brought big changes to the auto market. We saw vehicle shortages. There was a surge in demand at the same time. And what that caused was for prices to really skyrocket. On average, looking at July of 2024 from Kelley Blue Book doing some research on that, we have new cars, the average price is 48,401. And it depends on what type of vehicle you're looking for. There are some, based on the different models and makes, that could be a little cheaper. Electronic vehicles right now are running at a bit higher of a premium, 56,520. But there's some compact and subcompact SUVs that you can get for much cheaper prices. On average, the transaction prices remain about 13% higher than what they were in July of 2021. However, they've maintained relatively flat since July of 2023, which is a good sign for the market, and could be that we've already hit that peak and we could start to see things come back down slightly. So in terms of what we're seeing in terms of improvement of the market, there was a good article put out by Kelley Blue Book, and in that, Aaron Keating, who's an executive analyst at Cox Automotive, had a good quote in there saying that the thing about the U.S. is its diversity, and that goes for the U.S. auto market as well. There are many expensive, high-profile vehicles out there, but consumers have many good options priced well below the industry average. We hear this from large dealers all the time. No matter the budget, chances are we can make something work. This is particularly true when there's inventory is higher and incentives are flowing. So what we've seen in the market as well is that car makers are boosting the incentives. We started seeing that in July, and it continues through September. And according to Kelley Blue Book, the incentives, which are usually markdowns by the dealerships or cash incentives given by the manufacturers, they made up 7% of the average transaction price in July of 2024. And this is up from just a year ago, where it was only at 4.4%. And this is good news. That means that you can probably get a vehicle, even though the average selling price is still a little high, the dealers are offering more incentives to help lower that out the door price on the vehicles. So it's definitely a buyer's market right now for the new cars, with bigger incentives and some dealers offering additional discounts to move those 2024 models as the 2025 models begin to arrive. Actually, I'm going to go back to this 1 second because I was actually looking up this morning because I wanted to see, one of the things that we're seeing, as we just mentioned there, is that the inventory in the dealers is improving pretty greatly. So, as of September, inventories are now exceeding historical norms, which is a great sign, and it could help to see where prices start to come down a bit more. And it's kind of varies based on the manufacturer. It seems like a lot of our domestic manufacturers have the higher inventories than maybe some of the foreign partners that we have. But that's a good sign to help show that the prices could start to come down a little bit, and the dealers are going to continue to offer more of those incentives on the vehicles. So let's go ahead and jump into our 5 keys to real savings. So the first is going to be to know your budget, and I know Emery touched on that a little bit as well. Step 2 will be doing your homework. Then we're going to talk about financing and obtaining a loan pre-approval, how to negotiate at the dealership, and then we'll get into more details about our Auto Advantage service here at EdFed. So key 1, know your budget. How much should you spend on a vehicle? And it's really going to depend on what your income is. So for your car payment itself, you want to look to spend no more than 10 to 15% of what your monthly salary is. And that can be your gross salary, so before taxes, to make that calculation. The total vehicle cost, so when you're thinking about how much it is for insurance, how much it is for gas, should total no more than 20% of what your monthly salary is. And then when looking at overall debt, you want to make sure that your overall monthly debt versus what your monthly income is somewhere between the range of 50 and 55%. You really want to try and keep it within that range. So that way you can, as Emery talked about, still continue to save for a rainy day. We know that things happen, emergencies come up. And if you overextend on what that monthly debt to monthly income is, it kind of prevents you from being able to put a little money aside for those rainy days. So ideally, you want to try and be somewhere between that 50 and 55%. Once you know there with what the monthly payment is going to be and how much you can maybe afford based on your budget, that's where you're going to start to decide on, well, what can fit that budget? Do I need to look at new or maybe even a pre-owned? There's a lot of good quality pre-owned vehicles out there that you can get at a pretty decent price, lower than what it would be on a brand new vehicle. And maybe they're only a couple years old. You can find them with 20 to 30,000 miles maybe, but it's helped to reduce the price a bit. So that's something that you would want to consider. You want to consider what the car insurance costs are. So maybe you already have a car now, you're paying a certain amount for insurance, but if you change to a new car, depending maybe on the model, what's that insurance cost going to be? Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Is it going to stay the same? I would suggest that you contact your agent, let them know what you're looking at and what you're interested in, and then they'll be able to give you an estimate of approximately how much that monthly payment might be. And as we talked about, you want to be able to save for those unexpected expenses. I know Emery touched on this earlier as well. You never know when something could come up. You hit a nail on the road, pop a tire, maybe you need to get a new tire, or something goes wrong with the engine. You need to have maintenance done on that. So you just want to be able to still save just in case if something happens. And then you want to look at what is your trade-in. So do you have a car right now? How much is it worth? Do you have equity in that vehicle? Do you still have a loan against it, or are you maybe upside down? Do you owe more than what the value of the vehicle is? So those are going to be things that you want to look at and do research on to know what is going to be your purchasing power. Because if you owe more than what you currently the value is worth, that's going to put you into where you may have to put a down payment, or it might make it where you can buy less of a car because that's going to drop essentially what your purchasing power is. Then how much are you going to need to borrow? Do you already have some cash down saved? Maybe that helps to increase your purchasing power, and then you don't need to borrow as much. So you want to take all these things into consideration. And as we talked about, consider the total cost, not just the car payment. Sometimes you might see, well, I can afford this really nice, fancy luxury vehicle, but then you find out the insurance costs or the maintenance costs on it are actually very high. And now all of a sudden your budget is kind of thrown off a bit. So key 2 is going to be to do your homework. So you've worked on your budget, kind of know where you're at from a monthly payment standpoint and how much that can afford you. And there's good calculators out there. Bankrate, I know bankrate.com. They have some good calculators where you can put in what your monthly payment you want to hit is and the term, and it can kind of spit back to you what the total amount of loan you can afford. So you can do that to then know, okay, well, this is how much car maybe I can afford. And now that you know what your budget is, now it's going to be doing the research. What car fits that budget? And you don't need a rush. There's no rush into it. You can go ahead and take your time, research. There's a lot of dealers in the area that you can, go around and search. So there's no need to rush into anything. This is a big purchase. You're going to be keeping the loan for anywhere from, let's say, 4 to 6 years, sometimes even longer. So you want to make sure that you're not rushing into it and making any rash decisions. So you want to do your vehicle research. Look up, what's the reliability of that vehicle? What's the safety features on it? What options come with it? And what options are important to you to have? And what is that cost of ownership? And then also, choosing the right vehicle. What's the fuel cost? Do you have a long commute every day? Maybe you want something a bit more economical, maybe even one of those electric vehicles, or do you have a short commute and you're not as concerned with what the fuel cost is? And then also the practicality. Maybe if you have a family of 5, you may want to stay away from the Mazda Miata, a little 2-seater. Maybe that's not the most practical vehicle to have. So you want to take all that into consideration as you're doing your homework. And there's some really good online tools and websites that you can use to help you do that research. So in terms of researching the reviews of vehicles, safety features, etc., there's Edmunds.com, consumerreports.com is a good one as well, Carfax, and jdpower.com. And then looking up what's the approximate value of those vehicles, or even the value of your trade-in, as we talked about, to get a rough idea on what you might get for your trade. There's NADA.com, KBB, which is for KellyBlueBook.com, Carfax, and JD Power as well. Can all give approximate estimates on what the value of a vehicle is, even for new and used. So that way you kind of know ahead of time, this is what I should be looking for. And then there's search sites. So you can use groovecar.com, which EdFed does partner with. So we have a link for them on our website. We have cars.com, AutoTrader, Carfax, and jdpower.com are all great vehicle search sites where you can search the area to find the vehicle that you're looking for. So once you've kind of narrowed down, maybe there's a few makes and models that you're interested in, you can find out what dealers are offering them. So the key for financing, so step 1 is get pre-approved at your credit union before you go car shopping. So even though you've done your budget, you've kind of searched for what kind of car might fit that budget, getting the pre-approval at EdFed or at your credit union, you're going to be able to help know exactly how much you can get approved for. As Emery talked about before, credit's very important for that. What is your credit history? And that's going to also help determine, how much you can get approved for, along with what the budget is. Most financial institutions, they're not just looking at your credit score, but also, what is the budget and what can fit. So they're going to help you with some of that part of it as well. And as Emery talked about, it's a good idea beforehand is to use the free resource to look up your credit report, see what's on there. You can do annualcreditreport.com. It's a free service to be able to pull, as Emery talked about, any of your credit bureaus and take a look and see what's on there. See if there's anything that needs to be cleaned up ahead of time. What can you do to help improve your credit to help you get, maximize your pre-approval. Then you also want to look at, will you need a down payment? Not everywhere requires a down payment. Here at EdFed, we don't necessarily require a down payment either. It really all depends on, what's the value of your trade-in, if you're upside down, what's the purchase price of the new car, and credit does play a factor into that, and that's how it is at many financial institutions. So again, your credit's very important to help determine that. And then if you have a trade-in, what's the value of that trade-in? Because that's going to, again, it could possibly help with the purchasing power that you have. And you want to shop around for the best offer for your trade. So there's places like CarMax, AutoBuy, Carvana, or even Enterprise Car Sales. They'll give you real cash value for the car that you're trading in. CarMax, for example, will actually give you a 10-day written offer that you can take with you as you're shopping and going to the dealerships and use that to compare what the dealer is maybe offering you. And with your trade-in, you always want to make sure you have it clean before you take it to any of these places or even to the dealer to get that, reviewed for how much it might be worth. A clean car will get you a higher value for it. And if you think about it, even if you're looking to purchase a vehicle yourself from an individual, if you went and looked at that car and it looks like it hasn't been washed in a year and the inside is, kind of dirty and maybe, wrappers or something in the car, you're probably not going to value that car yourself as much. Where if it's nice and spick and span clean, the inside looks like it's been detailed, the perception is that the value is going to be higher. So same thing at the dealership, same thing at CarMax. So a clean car can help yield you a higher value on that vehicle. So make sure you have the trade-in clean. So now that you have your budget done, you've gotten your pre-approval, you know exactly what your purchase power is. Now it's time to go shopping. And so when you're doing that, you want to make sure that you're sticking to your strategy, be objective, test drive. Test driving is very important. Daytime is the best time to go shopping for a vehicle. That way you can inspect it. You can see it in the full sunlight. If it's a used car especially, are there any dents, dings, scratches that maybe at nighttime you may not have been able to see? So sometimes going and doing your shopping during the day, if you could pick a weekend, that's the best time to go and find the vehicles. And you want to make sure that you're allowing for sufficient time. One thing that a lot of consumers don't understand is that this process takes time. Even if you have pre-approval, even if you work with our Auto Advantage service, which we'll get into a little bit later of what they do for us, you could still expect to spend somewhere between 2 and 3 hours at the dealership to get all the paperwork done, the test driving, the whole 9 yards. So make sure you're allowing for sufficient time. It's not going to be something that you're in and out in 30 minutes. And your smartphone is your friend. Nowadays, everybody's got a little computer in their pocket. So use your smartphone, to your advantage. There's going to be times where maybe you're there and you thought you might want a certain make or model. Then after your test driving, you realize maybe that's not the one for you, but something else catches your eye on the lot. And you didn't prepare for it, right? It wasn't part of your research that you did. Well, take out your smartphone, go to those same websites, look up the value of that vehicle. So that way you can go ahead and do the negotiations properly. And then most important is to stick to your budget. You did all of that research ahead of time. You've done all the planning. You created the budget. Try not to let a new shiny vehicle persuade you to go over budget. You made all that effort to make sure that you have a strategy, and we want to make sure that we stick to it. And why I say test driving is so important is because you may think that there's a certain car that is your dream car, and that's going to be the one you want to buy. But then you go and test drive it and you realize something about it just isn't right. I know that happened to me when I was buying my last vehicle. I really thought I was going to want a Volkswagen Golf GTI. That was the car for me. But when I went and actually test drove it, just didn't feel right sitting behind. There was something about it that just wasn't what I had in my mind. So I ended up, continuing to have to go back to the drawing board, start my research over, and found something different. And it's not to say that it's not a good car. There's many people who really enjoy that vehicle, but for me, it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And so that's where test driving really comes in handy. You don't want to buy a car without getting behind the wheel and test driving it. So some test driving tips. One, you want to inspect the vehicle. So do a full walk around of the car before you even get in it. Look for any dents, dings, scratches, etc., especially on the used vehicles. New vehicles, you should have less of an issue, but it's still good to walk around. You never know what could happen during the shipping process. Check the oil, again, especially on the used vehicles. New vehicles, you shouldn't have that, issue of having, old oil or anything like that in there, but, it could happen. But on the used vehicles, make sure that you check it. When you pull out the dipstick, is it, really dark, sludgy kind of looking oil, or is it kind of more clean and viscous? You want to kind of check all those things out. And if you're not sure, ask the dealership, when was the last time that the oil was changed? When was the last time the fluids were changed on this vehicle? Same with the transmission fluid. Is it, full in the right level? And while you're actually doing the test drive, turn down the radio. While everybody likes to have a good radio in their car, listen to their favorite music, and it's good to test to make sure it works properly. While you're doing the test drive, turn the volume down to 0. That way you can listen for any rattling that's going on in the car, maybe any noises that, shouldn't be there. You don't want to have a bad experience later where, you kept the volume up at max because you really like the car stereo, but then later find out that there was something that wasn't quite right with the vehicle that you could have heard by keeping the noise down. And then check the window sticker for what's the standard and optional equipment on the vehicle. So if it says that it comes, for example, with the all-weather floor mats, which are usually like your, kind of WeatherTech style with the rubber mats, but you're looking in the car and you see that it only has the carpet mats, ask the dealer that question. Well, hey, the window sticker says this. Where are these options? And just make sure the vehicle, what it says on the window sticker is actually what's in the car. So now we're going to move into our negotiating at the dealer. So first thing is you don't want to focus only on the monthly payment. You really want to focus on what is the selling price of that vehicle to make sure that you're getting a good price. You've done the research, you know what the value of these vehicles are. And if you focus only on the monthly payment, you may end up buying a car that fits your budget from a payment perspective, but you actually overpaid for that vehicle. So for example, maybe your budget's, $300 a month. The dealer can put you into something, but maybe you pay a couple thousand over what the value of that vehicle is, all because you were just focused on the monthly payment. So you really want to focus on what is the selling price of that vehicle. And a fair price on a vehicle for new cars, MSRP, also known as the sticker price, is a good starting point. You really don't want to pay more than that because that is what has been deemed as the value of that vehicle. And now with the inventories getting better, there being more incentives involved with it, you really want to try and see if you can get under MSRP. But as long as you're not exceeding MSRP, that's a fair price. For used vehicles, it's a little bit different. They don't have an MSRP. So what you'd want to use there is either NADA or Kelley Blue Book and look at what is the retail value, the clean retail value for that vehicle. And on used cars, you want to make sure you're considering what the mileage is and the options. Both the NADA and the Kelley Blue Book websites, they do give you options to be able to fill in what the value is, what condition the vehicle is in, as well as what options are on the vehicle. And then that's going to be able to, show you what is the retail value. And again, you don't want to exceed that retail value. So you want to try and get that down. And I will say that with new and used cars, you're typically able to get kind of better discounts on the new cars versus the used. And that's just the way that the market works. The dealers, they're buying those used cars for a certain value. And in order to make a profit on it, they have to sell it. They have like kind of a minimum that they have to sell it at. So you may not get as much of a negotiation on a used car as a new, but that doesn't mean that you still can't get a good deal on a quality used vehicle. So when you're at the dealer, you've found the vehicle, you said, this is the one for me. Now it's time to put together the actual transactions. So with that, there's actually 3 separate transactions. First is going to be negotiating the sale price of the car. So the new car that you're purchasing or used car that you're purchasing, that's where you want to start. Get the dealer to come down on the price, get to that fair value for the vehicle. And you want to start there. Get that locked in. Once you have that locked in, then negotiate the price of your trade-in. So you've already done your research on that. You've already gone to CarMax maybe and gotten a written value, so you know what the car is worth. Now you start negotiating that. If you do have that written value from CarMax or another institution such as that, use that to your advantage. Show the dealer, hey, I can go to CarMax and I can sell my used car there for this price. Give me at least that value. If you can get at least the same value that, let's say, CarMax was offering you, then it's actually beneficial at that point to trade it in at the dealership because when you trade in the vehicle along with the purchase of the new car at the dealership, you actually get some tax savings on that. It reduces what the taxable amount of that new purchase is. Where if you just sell it at CarMax and then use it as a down payment instead, the down payment is after taxes, so you don't get the tax savings. So that's something that you want to consider as well. You can also always sell your vehicle, your current vehicle on your own as a private party sale. The only thing with that is that it's a little less inconvenient because you have to market it yourself, find a seller, do all that, and then use it. So it takes a little bit more time. Trading in your vehicle at a dealership or even at CarMax is the more convenient option. Although you can usually sell your car on your own for a little bit more. So you just have to weigh out the pros and cons on which way you want to go. But if you are trading it in, do that negotiation after you've already secured the price for the new vehicle. Third is the financing. So if you've already obtained your credit union pre-approval, that step's already done. You just really need to let the dealership know, I've already been pre-approved. I'm going to be financing through my credit union. It transacts as a cash sale essentially for you. So it makes it pretty easy. But if you haven't done that and you're looking to try and do the financing through the dealership, you want to know about, what is the rate that you can qualify for. You may see a lot of times advertised very low rates, and we'll get into that in a minute, kind of the truth about those low rates. But do you qualify for that? If you take the low rate, are you giving up maybe some other type of discount that you can get for the vehicle? So you want to just make sure that as you're going through that, you ask those types of questions of, well, if I take your financing, am I giving up a discount on the car? Or do I get both? Or, how does that look? What rates can you offer me? And then compare that to, maybe what your credit union can offer you instead. So the truth about the 0% financing, and this is true not just for 0%, but a lot of the very low rates that you see advertised on TV, maybe 1.9, 2.9%. The thing is that those rates are not offered on all makes and models. So typically it's the makes and models that the manufacturer has a high inventory of and they're trying to move a bit quicker. So we are seeing that right now in the industry. I see a lot of commercials myself for it, where like Honda and Toyota and even some of the domestic dealer manufacturers, they're offering very low rates, for those vehicles. But it's not on every make and model. So just be aware of what that is before you go in. You may see the ad and say, well, I'm going to go to Ford and I'm going to buy this truck and I'm going to get it at 1.9%. It may not be on that specific model that you're looking for. So make sure you do the research on that ahead of time. And also sometimes when you're taking those lower rates, you're actually giving up a discount. So if we kind of stick with, the trucks, a lot of times on, trucks, whether it's Chevy, Ford, Dodge, many of them, they're offering very high incentives on the vehicles right now, maybe $5,000 to $10,000 off of, the price of the car, usually done after taxes. So it's done as a rebate. But if you take that, then you usually don't get the lower rate as well. So it's one or the other. So you want to weigh out kind of what are the pros and cons. Again, if I take 2.9%, am I going to end up paying less in interest than if I gave up the $8,000, let's say? More than likely not. You're probably going to pay less in interest or more in interest than if you would have just taken the $8,000. So you want to kind of weigh out those options. And then the other thing is a lot of those low rates that they advertise, they're for very short terms. So you may see the 0%, it may only be for 36 months, or even the 1.9 or 2.9 could be for only 36 months. So while the rate is very low, by having it be such a short term on the loan, you're going to have a very high payment and now it's not going to fit your budget. And then when you do get to a longer term, you're going to find out that, oh, well, the interest rate's not as great as I thought it was going to be. Maybe it's 6, 7, 8% even for some of those higher terms to help get the payment into your budget. And that's where, getting your pre-approval with your credit union ahead of time really can help you with that. And then we can always work with you if, somebody's offering a little bit lower rate. You can always come back and let the credit union know, and we can see if maybe we can match the rate. So continuing with our negotiating at the dealer, the other thing you want to do is be ready to walk away. South Florida has many dealers. It seems like anywhere you turn, you can find a dealership. So you want to make sure that, don't feel like you're locked in to just one specific dealer. If you're looking at Hondas, for example, if the dealer that you're at right now isn't willing to negotiate with you, drive down the road or up the street, find another Honda dealer and, see if they have the same make and model. And, maybe their inventory for that specific model is a little bit greater than what the prior one was, and they're more willing to work with you. You'll also be amazed that when you walk away, how quickly the salesman calls you back to say, oh, well, I spoke to my manager and now we can do this. So don't be afraid to walk out. Watch out for any hidden fees that the dealer may have. Not to say every dealer does this, but you just want to make sure that you're reviewing that purchase order. The purchase order is going to be a breakdown of what the selling price is, any dealer, add-ons or any dealer fees that they have, taxes, the tag and transfer fees for the title of the vehicle, your down payment, rebates, and then what they call the out the door price. What is the total amount owed after all those taxes, fees, etc. Certain things you can't get away from, taxes. So you're not going to be able to negotiate what the taxes are on the vehicle. And the same with the title and tag fees for the vehicle as well. Those are state fees that get charged. So you're not going to be able to negotiate those out. But you want to make sure that anything else that you see on there, you're asking the question, well, what is this fee for? To make sure that it's not something that you didn't ask for, or maybe could be something that you can negotiate out of the price of the vehicle. One thing that you're going to see on every purchase order is dealer fees. So there's usually a line for, their dealer fee. Dealerships, they're required, not that they're required to charge a dealer fee, but if they charge dealer fees, they're required to charge it to every customer. So most of the time you're going to see that on there. One thing that you can ask them to do is reduce the selling price by that dealer fee. So if they're charging $9.99 for a dealer fee, ask them to reduce the selling price by that $9.99, essentially negating out what the dealership fee is. Some are willing to do it, some are not, but it is a tactic that you can use to try and help lower the price. And then, do not take delivery of the vehicle if it's not ready. So if it's a used car and they promise to, let's say take some dents out of the car before they, before selling it to you, make sure that you don't drive off the lot and then say, oh, I'll come back in a, few weeks to get this repaired. If you do, you want to make sure that you have it in writing that they're willing to do that. Otherwise, if it's just on their word, you always run that chance of driving off, the deal's complete, you come back and they say, oh, no, we never promised you that. So if they're making any promises, make sure that it's either in writing. Otherwise, don't take delivery of the vehicle if it's not ready. Some other helpful tips that we have, remember, never drive the vehicle off the lot until after the deal is signed and sealed. So you want to make sure you get everything in writing, everything is done. You don't want to have any blank documents. Oh, we'll just sign this temporary contract, while you're waiting for the credit union to send us the funds or anything like that. You don't want to do that because sometimes some dealers will say, well, we'll let you drive the car off today. You can come back, tomorrow or the next day with your credit union financing, but we just need you to sign this, temporary contract. The thing is that in the state of Florida, there is no right of rescission on vehicle loans. So once you sign that contract, there is no obligation for that dealership to hold the contract for 36 hours or 72 hours, whatever it may be. Some may do that as a courtesy. However, there is no legal requirement for them to hold that. So they do have the right, as soon as you sign and drive off the lot, to put through that financing. And if you're not careful, you may find out that you ended up signing for a loan that you don't want at a very high rate. So just make sure that you have everything in order. Don't sign any blank documents. And, try to keep, sometimes I have on here, keeping the trade to force the purchase. We don't see that often. However, certain dealerships, maybe they want to try and not let you leave. So what they'll do is, you're having them inspect the vehicle for the trade-in, and maybe they're kind of holding on to those keys and kind of keeping them hostage a little bit until they can keep you to wear you down to buy the car. So just make sure as soon as you're done, with them doing the inspection of the car to see how much they can trade for it, that you get those keys back right away. Some other helpful tips. Look at potential dealer add-ons and options. So again, as you're going through the purchase order, is there something on there that they're trying to add, such as, window etching, which would be to etch in to usually the side window, the VIN number. Are they adding some additional paint sealant? Are they saying, oh, well, we put nitrogen in your tires, it's a premium air, do you really need that? And any other accessories, whether they're manufacturer or aftermarket ones. Some things you may want, other things you may not. Just make sure that you're looking through those and asking questions on anything if it's something you really want. The nitrogen-filled tires, honestly, air is air. You don't need to worry about having nitrogen. It's not going to make the ride any better. So, it may not be something that you want to pay extra for. So when you're at the dealership, you're going to deal with the finance and insurance department, also known as the F&I department, and you're going to meet with a finance manager to finalize your deal. So whether you're financing through your credit union or you're going to end up taking financing through the dealership, you're still going to meet with the F&I manager. And this is just to sign all the paperwork. They're the ones who help you to get all the documentation complete for the sale of the car, the purchase order, etc. So if you are pre-approved with your credit union, you want to inform them that you have that pre-approval. They're also going to be selling you different products. This is usually where they're going to offer you an extended warranty or gap insurance, etc. Again, these are things that are also offered through your credit union, so you can find out and compare, the price between the two. Typically, you're going to find that the products sold through your credit union are significantly cheaper than what they are through the dealership. There's definitely, a big gap there, no pun intended, on the price of those. And then remember, your credit union pre-approval processes you like a cash buyer. So it does make the process a little bit quicker, and you don't have to have them run your credit again while you're there at the dealership. So now this moves us on to key number 5, and that is using the Auto Advantage service from EdFed. So our Auto Advantage service, it's a concierge service, really, as Emery was talking about before, where we essentially take care of step number 4 for you. So we work with over 50 dealers in the South Florida area. All makes and models are included in that. We work with both new and used vehicles, and we take the hassle out of that negotiating process for you. So our team of auto advisors, they take care of all the negotiations for you. They schedule appointments for you to go and do the test drives and see the vehicles and finalize the sale of your vehicle. They help you save money, save time. It's no haggling. You get that VIP treatment, and we have that large dealer network. So it really takes the pressure out of having to go and actually do that negotiation on your own with the dealer. So step one to use our Auto Advantage service would be to get pre-approved. So contact the credit union, get your pre-approval. Once you have the pre-approval, one of our member advisors or our lending center representatives will be able to get you over to our Auto Advantage team. And then, here in Kendall, so if you live around the Kendall area or you branch, your local branches around the Kendall area, you're going to work with Raul or Annette. And if you're in the North area, out of our Miami Gardens branch, we have Claudia. The good thing with our Auto Advantage service is that you do not have to come to these branches to utilize the service. Most of our members do everything over the phone with our Auto Advantage team. They make it very simple to get everything done. You just let them know, this is how much I've been pre-approved for. This is the car I'm interested in, or the types of cars I'm interested in. And then they take over and do all the work for you. They're going to come back and let you know, this is where we found the vehicle. This is the price. This is out the door. The whole 9 yards. And you can still compare it to the research that you've done, because you still are going to have that part done from steps, 1 through 3. But they really take care of doing all of that haggling for you. And this is a completely free service that EdFed offers for you. And I will say too, you don't have to just be pre-approved to use the Auto Advantage service. If you are going to buy your car cash, you can also do that as well. So review 5 keys to real savings. 1, make sure you know your budget. Do that math and everything ahead of time. Do your homework before you visit the dealer. Obtain your pre-approval from your credit union, so that way you know what your true budget is and how much your purchasing power is. Effectively negotiate at the dealer, or use our Auto Advantage service instead and let them do that negotiation for you. And some key takeaways here is to plan for your purchase. Make sure you have that strong savings, as Emery mentioned earlier in the presentation. Do the free credit check, annualcreditreport.com. As Emery mentioned, you're allowed to pull each of the 3 bureaus once a year for free. So you can spread them out, as Emery mentioned earlier, or if you wanted to pull all 3 at the same time, you could, but it's definitely a good idea to check that out. Keep your budget top of mind to make sure you stick within that budget. Do your homework. Research any new info presented, while at the dealer on your smartphone. So if it's something new came up, take out your smartphone, look it up, save those websites, to your bookmarks. And then stand strong and be prepared to leave. So remember, you have options. There are a lot of dealers in the South Florida area that you can go to. And trust me, they will be willing to work with you, especially if you head out. They will be calling you, I'm sure, very shortly to make that deal work. So there's 3 different ways that you can apply here at EdFed. We're here to help. So you can apply online at www.edfed.org/apply. You can also contact our lending center by phone at 305-273-LOAN, or in person at one of our 8 convenient locations. We recently opened a branch in Miramar. So please, if you're in that area, feel free to come by. And then once you have that pre-approval, our lending center or our member advisors in the branches can refer you over to our Auto Advantage team. And again, in Kendall, that's going to be Raul and Annette. And in Miami Gardens, that is Claudia. And before we end, I do want to mention that we are going to be having an auto sale event here at our Kendall location on Saturday, October 19th, between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. I encourage everyone to come out. We're going to have 6 different dealerships here on site at our Kendall location. So we're going to have Bomnin Automotive Group, Kendall Toyota, Ocean Mazda, Southdade Kia, Auto Nation Honda of Miami Lakes, and Selective Motors. And they're going to be offering some really great member-only prices during that sale. In addition to that, if you get pre-approved and buy the day of the sale from one of these dealerships, we're going to give you no payments for 90 days. So you won't have to make a payment until January of 2025. And we're also giving a 0.25% discount, so 25 basis points off of the rate that you qualify for. So that's a great savings and helps with your purchasing power. And we're going to have over 150 vehicles here on site for you to be able to shop through on that one day. It's going to be a great event, so I definitely recommend that you make your way out. And to get more information on that, you can go to www.edfed.org/autosale. And that wraps it up for me. And I'll turn it back over to Emery.
Thank you so much for all of that wonderful and useful, beneficial, so many words used to describe it, information. I thought it was very well. So now we're going to open it up for some Q&A. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, now would be the time to go ahead and start asking. So Tim, we have a question here that says, is it bad if you end up upside down on a new car purchase?
So not necessarily. It's going to happen sometimes. It's we see it, and that's why a lot of lenders, a lot of financial institutions, they allow for higher loan to values on the loans. For example, here at EdFed, we can go up to 130% loan to value because we know that sometimes it's going to happen where the current vehicle you're in, you trade it in and you're already a little bit upside down. So that's going to kind of carry over to the new car. I think the most important thing there is to try and eventually get yourself out of that. So maybe instead of trading in the car before you've paid it off, on this next purchase, try and pay it off in full before switching over to that next car. So it's not a bad thing per se, but you want to try and to eventually get out of it because it can become kind of a ripple effect that, okay, this car you're, maybe only 10% upside down, but the next one you're 30% upside down. It could become a snowball, and next thing you know, it's hard to get approval because of the amount of negative equity that you keep carrying over. So at some point you may want to try and just, keep the car as long as you can, get the loan paid off in full, and then that way it takes you out of that negative equity situation.
Thank you for that, Tim. We have another question coming from a member that says, what kind of advice can you give me if I already applied with EdFed and was declined?
So that's a good question. What I would suggest is there's a few options you can always try with a qualified co-applicant. Here at EdFed, we do allow for joint or co-applicants on loans that can assist with getting the approval. So depending on what the denial reasons were, that can be one way that we can assist to try and get you an approval. And if that's not an option, what I would suggest is we do partner with GreenPath, and GreenPath is a financial counseling service, and they can help do credit report reviews and help you kind of get back on track with the credit. They can also help do budgeting reviews, and it could be a good way that maybe we can't do something right now, but after working with GreenPath, getting your credit in line, getting the budget back in line, now we can help make something happen. So that would be the other option outside of adding a qualified co-applicant.
Thank you. So another question we have is if all the car brands and dealerships that you had listed are the ones that we work with, or do we go beyond that?
So we go beyond that. We have over 50 dealers that we work with in the South Florida area. The ones that are coming to the sale, even though we just have 6 of them coming to the sale, we work with many more outside of that. It's just that we can only fit so many on our lot here in Kendall. But we really have all makes and models. We even work with a couple dealers that have some of the luxury brands, such as Lexus, and outside of that as well. And I would say even in addition to that, even if it's not one of our dealerships that we work with, our Auto Advantage team, let's say you really wanted a luxury vehicle that we don't work with that, because I would say really the high end luxury is the only ones that we don't have a lot of dealerships for, such as let's say Maserati or Land Rover, things like that. Our Auto Advantage team can still help by taking a look at what the price is that you're getting from them and kind of helping you with the research side of it to say is it a good deal or not a good deal. So even if we don't work with them, maybe we can't necessarily do the negotiations for you on your behalf, but we can still at least look at the deal and say, yeah, that looks good. I would move forward with it, or give you some suggestions on how to get a lower price.
Thank you, Tim. So we have a bunch of questions coming in. Another question from a member that's asking, what would be a strong down payment amount or percent of income for those who don't have a trade-in or want to do both?
Okay, that's a good question. And a down payment's not necessarily required. You can always finance, the full purchase price of the vehicle, as long as, for at least with EdFed, the loan to value doesn't exceed 130%. But I would say that somewhere in the neighborhood of, the $2,500 to $5,000 is a good down payment amount to have. It really depends on what your budget is and what you can afford. One thing I'll say is that you don't want to use up all of your savings that you have as a down payment. So if you have 5,000 in savings, don't take every penny out to put down on the car if you don't need to. If you want to use, some of that, that would be fine. So, but I would say, on average, let's say somewhere between 2,500 and 5,000.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Another question that we have are, what are reasonable loan rates to be considered?
So that's a really good question, and it's one that it's somewhat hard to answer though. The market has changed so much, and there's a lot of different rates out there. As we talked about, there's what they call the captive financing, which is the financing being offered through the manufacturers. And those right now in the market that we're seeing, I've seen as low as about 2.9%, 1.9%, but that's usually very low terms, like 36 months. And we've seen even on those captives up to 5 or 6.9%. In the market at other credit unions, you're kind of seeing somewhere in that range of 6 to 7% for well qualified borrowers. And that's where it also really comes down to what your credit score is, of what kind of interest rate you're going to be able to get approved for. EdFed, we're continuously keeping our eye on the market, what rates are doing within the market, what the treasuries are doing, et cetera, to kind of see where and when rates could change. Things are kind of moving recently with the Federal Reserve lowering what prime rate is. However, it's kind of a trickle effect to get to auto loans and home loans, things like that, of when you're going to start to see those rates come down. So it's not going to be an immediate reduction of rates that you see once the Fed cut the rates. But probably over the next few months, 6 months, you'll see those rates starting to come down. But if you can get somewhere between, let's just say the 5 to 7% as a well-qualified borrower, that's right now kind of a pretty good rate to get.
Thank you, Tim. Another question we have is it better to fix your credit before trying to get pre-approved at EdFed?
I would say yes. If you have the time, if you're not in immediate need for a vehicle, so your current car is still running and holding on, I would definitely work on your credit first. The better your credit is, the lower rate you're going to be able to get approved for, which helps with what your purchasing power is, because rate is going to affect what your monthly payment is. So a higher rate means a higher monthly payment, which could then reduce how much you're able to, afford on the car. So I would definitely recommend working on your credit first. As I mentioned before, Green Path Financial Wellness, EdFed partners with them. It's a free service for many of the services that they offer, including the credit review and budgeting. So I would definitely recommend working on that first. And then once you get your credit in order, applying with EdFed.
Beautiful. Another question is, what car did you end up buying after the Volkswagen fell through?
That's a great question. So my second choice, and actually I fell in love with it. I still have it now. It's the Subaru WRX. It's kind of another nice little sporty car. I've had it now for 10 years, and it's running strong, and I've been very happy with it.
Thank you for sharing, Tim. Another question is, if you finance through the credit union, is the loan amount taken out of each pay period? What about in the summer?
These are great questions. So with EdFed, we have offer many different payment options on our loans. So we can set the loan up on a monthly schedule. We can do it biweekly. We can do it also semi-monthly. And so if you happen to be a Miami-Dade County Public School employee who's a 10-month employee, we can also have that payment taken directly out of your direct deposit that you have coming to EdFed. And as a 10-month employee, you would qualify for our summer skips on the loans. So what that means is that we essentially take your monthly payment, divide it into 20 biweekly payments. And during those summer months, usually it's between like the end of June through the beginning of September, no payments are required during that period. So it's a good advantage if you are a 10-month employee with Miami-Dade County Public Schools. But we offer the biweekly payments, the semi-monthly, and the monthly payments to all of our members. The skips, though, are only for MDCPS employees who are 10-month employees.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Another question we have here is a lot of dealers seem to have auto advantage plans that add another $2,000 or $3,000, especially for pre-owned cars. Can you get that taken off of the out of the door cost?
Many times you can, and I'm not exactly sure what the auto advantage plan would be, but a lot of times those are, kind of like service plans that they want to add on there. And so that's where you want to weigh the benefits, pros and cons. Well, what does it include? Is it something that, is worth the while? Like, does that include that you could take it in for all of the regular maintenance and it's being paid for? So maybe that would be something that's worth it. But definitely that should be something that you can get taken off of there. If it's one of those types of plans, that's something that you should be able to negotiate out.
Perfect. So another question is if your credit is bad, can you still go to the auto event and get a great deal?
Yes, absolutely. You can still come to our auto event, get a great deal. The price of the vehicles isn't based on your credit. That's more so just on the loan. But I would say regardless of what your credit is, if you don't have time to work on it right now before applying and you need the car, still apply with EdFed. Let us see what we can do for you. We have a few different loan types that we can try and work with to try and help get our members a good deal, even on the terms of the loans.
Thank you, Tim. Another question. We have
Sorry,
a
and they'll
few.
still and you still qualify for the 1/4% discount. So if you come to the sale, those same 90 no payment for 90 days and the 1/4% off the qualifying rate, those would still apply to some, regardless of what your credit is.
Thank you for sharing, Tim. Another question that we have is it true that the car sales are lower towards the end of the month, every month, towards the end of the month, aside from the car sales being lower towards the end of the year?
Right. So, and that's a really good point there. So you will see it's not necessarily that the selling prices are better, but what you will find at the end of the month sometimes is that dealers are more willing to make deals, right? They want to hit certain goals so that way they can get certain incentives back from the manufacturers. So they need to sell so many cars. So at the end of the month, especially if they haven't had a very productive month, they're going to be more willing to wheel and deal and apply some more of those incentives to the vehicles to help get a lower price. So sometimes kind of waiting until the end of the month could help to give you a little bit more leverage to get the price down on the car because the member or the dealership wants to get that car off their lot. And then one of the best times, honestly, to buy is the end of the year. So waiting and I'm not trying to tell anyone that needs a car to wait till December, but come the end of the year, that's when it really kicks into high gear for the dealerships, and they want to end their calendar year with a bang. And so they are definitely more willing to wheel and deal. And I think, especially this year, as we're seeing inventories rise, you may start to see some more of those big incentives come back at the end of the year that have really been absent over the last few years. So this could be a good December for members to purchase vehicles.
Nice. Thank you, Tim. Another question we have is if you can repeat the advantages that you had mentioned about the auto sale.
Sure. So for our auto sale, along with having over 150 vehicles here on the Kendall premise for you to shop through, we're going to have no payments for up to 90 days. So you won't have to make your first payment until January of 2025. And then the other advantage is a 1/4% off of your interest rate. So 0.25% off of your qualifying interest rate if you get pre-approved and purchase the day of the sale.
Thank you, Tim. Another question is if pre-approved, how long is it good for?
That is a great question and a common question that we get. Our pre-approvals are good for 30 days. So your application itself is good for 30 days from the day that we start the application and pull credit. After the 30 days, we would have to do another hard credit inquiry to get a refresh of that to be able to extend it another 30 days.
Thank you, Tim. Another question that we have is someone would like to purchase their lease end and they were recommended that a credit union would be able to do the negotiation for them. Is that true?
So with leases, unfortunately, there's not really any negotiation on a lease. The way the leases work is, essentially you are leasing that vehicle, and at the end of the term, you have the option typically to buy it, but it's at a predetermined amount. So there's not really any negotiations we could do on the selling price of that lease. That's done through the leasing company itself. But what EdFed could help with is doing the financing. So we can help with, if you're looking to finance a vehicle, and especially because it's a used cars tend to have higher rates. And from our experience recently, the dealerships on their used vehicle rates are much higher than what credit unions can offer. So being able to do the financing through your credit union, would be where like EdFed would be able to help on a lease purchase. But the actual negotiation of the selling price of that vehicle usually is predetermined and not anything we would be able to help with.
Thank you. Another question that we have is, as far as monthly payments, does EdFed base it on what the dealership would charge, or do they work with you?
So the monthly payments on your loan is based on what the loan amount is going to be, along with what the term of the loan is and with what the interest rate is. So, if you're working with our Auto Advantage team, they're going to help with the selling price of the vehicle to help make sure that you're getting the lowest selling price that we could get to help reduce what that out the door price is. But then the loan itself is going to be taking what the out the door price is and then using what the term of the loan is. So maybe you're financing for 6 years and then at your interest rate, and that's how the monthly payment is calculated. So that way it gets paid off within that given term. So in terms of, what EdFed can help with would be the negotiation of the selling price of that vehicle by going through Auto Advantage to help make sure you're getting the lowest price possible. And then that can help with what the monthly payment is.
Thank you, Tim. So, reiterating on another question that you had answered regarding the amount of dealerships and car brands that we work with, they would like to know more specifically if we work with BMW or if
So
BMW will be at the car sale.
So BMW is not going to be at the car sale. However, we do have a few BMW dealerships that we work with. What I would recommend is to contact our Auto Advantage service, and they can get more details for you on which dealers we work with specifically. And then, if you let them know what you're looking for, they can go ahead and start, assisting you with finding those vehicles.
Thank you, Tim. Another member asks if how can we get more information on GreenPath?
So on our website, we do have more information on that. So if you go to edfed.org, and then if you navigate to our other services page, they're under our credit counseling. So if you go to edfed.org and then click on other services, we have additional details on GreenPath on that page.
Thank you for sharing, Tim. Another question is, in your opinion, are there any new accessories or details in cars that end up costing more in the long run due to technological issues that we should avoid? For example, push to start or even hybrid cars.
That's a good question as well, and it's hard to say per se. Things like push to start, they've been around for a long time now. I think they've kind of got that nailed down pretty well without any issues. Although I will say that any type of technology runs the risk of failing. I would just say that, looking at some of the newer technology that comes out, if it hasn't been in the industry for a while, you always run that chance of having something go wrong. And then with the electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles, the biggest expense that comes with those is just what is the longevity of the battery itself. That's what I've seen and read in the industry is that, you may not get as long of a life out of a vehicle that has, either the hybrid battery or if it's an all electric. Off the top of my head, I don't know what the, average lifespan is of those vehicles, but it can become very costly if you have to replace those battery packs. From what I've read and heard in the industry is that typically at that point, you might as well just buy a new car instead of replacing those battery packs. And it's not to say that it's not worth still getting them. The technology continues to improve. The life of those batteries continues to improve. And so, just keep that in mind of how long are you planning on keeping the car. And a lot of these websites that we talked about during the slides, the Edmunds.com, things like that, they've done the research, and you can start, look up for those models that have, maybe hybrids, what's the typical lifespan of the batteries. And at least that way, okay, if it says that the battery is going to last 8 years, but you only plan on keeping the vehicle for 4 years, maybe it's not a deal breaker for you.
Thank you, Tim. Another question that we have is, does it affect the pre-approval process if credit was bad in the past, but currently in a good place now?
No, actually, that's somewhat of a positive thing for us to see, is that, even if you had, some negative credit history in the past, but the more recent credit history, especially over the, past 12 to 24 months, has been positive. And especially if the negative history that you had in the past has already been, paid off and closed, that's a good thing for us to see, because it shows that you're actually on a good path right now, and that would actually be a positive thing for us.
Thank you, Tim. Another question is, what is the range for credit rating for well-qualified buyers?
That's another great question. So thank you everyone for these amazing questions today. It really is defined by different financial institutions, define it differently. So a lot of the manufacturers, to get that captive financing for the 0%, 1.9, et cetera, they're looking at 780 plus credit scores, as well qualified. And that's why, we kind of give that caution of saying, maybe don't go in the dealer thinking that you're going to get 0%, because it's really for a very small, range of credit scores. So, 780 plus in the dealers is typically what we're seeing to get that captive financing. But it can really range, within the credit union industry of what qualifies for the lowest rates. Some places are, 720 plus, some places are 730 plus, some are 740 plus. It really depends on the, credit union and the other financial institution. But if you can be somewhere in the 700s, that's going to, give you an advantage. And the higher up you go, the more well qualified you become.
Thank you, Tim. We have another question here from a member that says that they have a vehicle loan with us, and when they got the car loan with us, that they had high credit, but unfortunately, it's not in the place that it was, and they would like to trade in their car. Will this be a major problem for them as a 10-month employee?
Not necessarily, just because the credit is dropped. One of the things that we'll look at for, looking to help them get approved for the next car is going to be how well they've paid EdFed in the past. So if they've been paying us well, even if their credit is dropped a little bit, that doesn't mean that it's going to negatively impact them in terms of getting another approval. We could still work with them on that. What it could affect is, as we talked about, the credit score is really what drives the interest rate. So it could just mean that the interest rate that they can get qualified for may be a little bit higher than what they were able to get qualified for before.
Thank you, Tim. Another question that we have is, can we bring a trade-in to the car sale?
Yes, absolutely. So Selective Motors, who's going to be here, they're going to be selling some used vehicles, but one of their primary reasons for being here is they're going to actually help the dealers with doing the trade-ins that day. So any vehicle that you bring in that needs to be a trade-in, Selective Motors will be able to do that purchase. So we are absolutely accepting trade-ins the day of the car sale.
Thank you, Tim. Another question we have is, do I need to be an EdFed member to use the purchasing service?
Not necessarily do you need to be an EdFed member. However, you do need to obtain your pre-approval to do that, because ultimately, it is a service just for our membership. However, if you get pre-approved for an auto loan, which you do need to then become a member for us to be able to book the loan, you can use the service. That being said, if you're a cash buyer and you're not a member, you would not be able to use the service. So at that point, if you're a cash buyer, you're not planning on getting a loan, so you would not end up becoming a member of EdFed. You would need to become a member first, and then you can use that service. But if you're going to get the loan with EdFed, even if you're not yet a member, as long as you've been pre-approved, you can use that service.
Thank you, Tim. Another question that we have is, why do dealerships still use the chip shortage to increase prices? Isn't that price gouging?
Well, that's a good question, and hopefully we're not seeing that too much anymore because the chip shortage is kind of a thing of the past. More recently, as we kind of talked about earlier in the presentation, we're seeing those vehicle inventories really rise and get to kind of levels that we haven't seen before, in a way. So, the chip shortage really shouldn't be used in that, and if that's a dealer telling you that, don't go to that dealer. I mean, honestly, as we talked about, there's a lot of different manufacturers in the area. So if they're trying to say, oh well, we can't, come down on the price because of the chip shortage, say not a problem. I'll go to the dealer down the street and see if they can work with me instead. There's plenty of dealers in the area, so I would not say that the chip shortage, because there is no chip shortage anymore, is a issue.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Another question that we have is, what if you started negotiating at the car sales coming up, but then it wasn't finalized at the car sale? Is the 90-day payment and the 0.25 off still valid?
And I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Of course. What if you started negotiating at the car sale and then it wasn't finalized? Your deal wasn't finalized at the car sale. Is the 90 days of no payments and the quarter off still good?
Okay, so and I'm glad that question got asked as well. Those promotions that we're having are really just for the day of the sale. So everything would have to be finalized the day of the sale in order to receive those incentives. The good thing with the day of the sale is that all the prices on the vehicles are already the pre-negotiated prices through our Auto Advantage service. So it really is going to make that day and the process that much smoother, because there's not really going to be any negotiating that needs to be done because EdFed's already done it for you. The dealers are already bringing in and pricing those vehicles at low prices for our members for this special event, so it can help make that process move along very quickly. But it would have to be
Awesome.
all processed and loan booked that day.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that, Tim. Another question that we have is, if you have approximately 85 to 90% of cash saved up for your car purchase and you would like to take advantage of the end of year sales, what's the minimum amount that would be financed through EdFed, that could be financed through EdFed?
That's a good question. We really, the lowest that we would do on a car loan, would be, we've done them as low as $2,000 before on car loans. So, I would say that, our minimum is 1,000 that we would do on a car loan, because we also offer auto equity loans, which would be the same loan type. And we can do those where if you have equity in the car and you want to cash out on it to help with maybe consolidating debt or something like that. And so our minimum is 1,000 that we would offer on a car loan. So yeah, if you're at that 80 or 90% saved up, you're planning on pretty much just paying cash, but you're just not quite there yet, but you don't want to miss out on these deals, and you only need to finance just, let's say, $5,000 to $10,000, we can absolutely help you with that.
Perfect. Will there be any Lexus or trucks at the car sale?
So we will have some trucks. So we are going to have Bomden here. So there's going to be Chevrolet, at the car sale. I believe we're also going to have some manufacturers from Dodge, because Bomden also has a Dodge dealer. So they're going to bring some trucks from there as well. We're not going to have Ford, unfortunately. However, we will have the Chevys and the Dodge here. The Lexus, there may be a couple of Lexuses, because we're bringing Kendall Toyota and they partner with Lexus of Kendall as well. So they may have one or two, but I will say typically we don't tend to have too many luxury vehicles at the sale. But if that's something that you're interested in, I would definitely recommend reaching out to our Auto Advantage team ahead of time, and they will be able to give you more details on if the dealer will be able to bring any Lexus.
Thank you, Tim. Another question that we have from a member that wants to know if there's a penalty if they pay off their loan early.
Another good question, and the answer to that is no. We do not charge any prepayment penalties, on any of our loans here at EdFed. So you can feel free to pay extra anytime that you want to, or pay off the loan early anytime that you'd like.
Awesome. Another question we have is, how about if you want to refinance with EdFed and then lease? Is that possible? And does one have to wait a specific time for the lease?
And I'm not 100% clear on the question because you can refinance with EdFed. So refinances would be to refinance a purchase, right? So you've purchased the vehicle, it's financed somewhere else, and you want to bring that loan over to EdFed to help lower your rate. We can absolutely help, with that. And the only thing is that EdFed doesn't do any leases themselves. So like we don't do lease financing. We can help you purchase your lease, but we wouldn't be able to do a lease itself. So the lease side of it, we wouldn't really be able to assist with. But if the question is to refinance, and then maybe after they've refinanced, look at getting a lease, maybe turning in that car, they can do that as quickly as they want, just that EdFed wouldn't be able to help with the leasing side of it. But we can absolutely help with refinances. We have a great deal on our refinances. We have a program that we call our swap and drop, where if the rate you qualify with us, based on your credit score, is not lower than the current rate you have with the other financial institution, we can drop that rate by up to 1%. So for example, let's say if you have 6% where it's currently financed and our rate is a little bit above that, we would be able to offer you 5%, to get the refinance done here at EdFed. So we can almost guarantee that we can lower your interest rate.
Awesome. Another question is, how do I get pre-approved for the car sale on the October 19th?
So there's 3 ways to apply. You can apply online through our website. It's the www.edfed.org/apply. And you just select a vehicle loan that it's for a purchase. And there's going to be a question on the application that asks, are you interested in our car sale? And you just select yes, and that'll make sure that your apps is coded for the car sale. You can also call into our lending center at 305-273-5626. And they can assist you over the phone with taking the application. Just let them know you're interested in our car sale, and they'll make sure that they code your application for that. Or you can come into one of our 8 branches and apply with a member advisor as well.
Awesome, Tim. Last question that we have for today. And that question is, how often do these car sales happen?
So this is our second car sale for this year. We held one back in March. We're going to have one now. So, we've kind of varied it. We're just getting back into the in-person car sales since the pandemic. But I would say that we should be having 2 a year at least.
Awesome.
The months can change a little bit depending on what's going on in the month. But, I would say to look out for, anytime we're going to have a sale, we absolutely put it on our website. We send out marketing, through email. So keep an eye on your emails and our website for any upcoming events.
Awesome. Thank you so much for a wonderful webinar, Tim. That was a lot of beneficial information, and I hope that you guys all found this webinar beneficial. So I do want to say that we host these EdFed Academy webinars on the last Saturday of each month. And the next one is going to be scheduled for October 26th. And we're going to invite a detective from the Miami-Dade Police Department to give us some tips on how to better protect our information. So I want to thank you again, everybody, for joining us today on this Saturday and taking the time out of your day. And to please follow us on our social media pages. You might see a familiar face. Our social media handle is at EdFedCU on all of our social pages: Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, TikTok, you name it, you'll find us. And to please visit our YouTube channel, EdFed TV, to see all of our past recorded webinars on our EdFed Academy. So I do want to thank you guys all for coming today, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Emery.
Thank you, Tim.